Good evening to all the participants. We'll be starting the tutorial session for the lectures that were delivered by Professor Mitrano today. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. For this tutorial, I had in mind the following format. Then I leave it up to you to decide. Because most of you probably were already familiar with Audre Lorde, I would like to concentrate the group work on, because I would like you to have a peer-to-peer discussion before we converge, just as we did yesterday. So I was thinking it would be a good idea to focus on one of the two prompts relating to Carla Lonzi. And then move on to Audre Lorde, the two prompts on Audre Lorde, and discuss Audre Lorde together as an entire room. If you think that is a good idea for you, a productive idea for you, we could, for example, start precisely with prompt 1. Let me share the screen so that I can go over the prompts. Okay, you're seeing the screen. So prompt 1 contains an image, the image that you saw during the lecture. Carla Lonzi is in Minneapolis during this brief spell in the US. And she has her tape recorder with her, and she is transcribing what would become self-portrait. Her intention is to write a book of criticism, of art criticism, but a different kind of criticism. Now, the prompt encourages you to focus a bit more closely on a passage from the introduction to Self-Portrait, where Lonzi describes what the book is in her intentions and what kind of criticism she was looking for. Remember, the possibility of an encounter. I commented on this passage during the lecture. So here I suggest we deepen a little bit our knowledge of the text. I know it's only a part. It's only a part of a longer introduction. It's only a passage. But however, I think that focusing on the kind of language she uses, you can gain knowledge as to her critical direction. But the suggested question are: why the title Self-Portrait? Okay, why did Lonzi decide to entitle a book about in which she was trying to talk about artists' self-portrait? What does self mean? I should be more tentative and say what might self mean here? What kind of statement is Lonzi trying to make about the critic, especially since, as we see here, she turns to technology for help in her attempt to imagine a new figure of the critic, a new task for the critic. She turns to the use of technology, the tape recorder. So I think we could probably benefit from working in groups. Let's take, like yesterday, 10 to 15 minutes group work, and then we can converge and begin sharing the some points of your group discussions and take it from there. We can discuss together the second prompt, or we can move to Lorde and then come back. Whatever you need and whatever might be productive for the people who decided to meet up again in this room for the tutorial. Let me stop sharing so that I can get some feedback from the chat. Can we form groups and take on the prompt number 1 in the tutorial linked to lecture 5? Do you think? Is that something that you think might be helpful? Then if it
Yes, ma'am, we
fits.
can. We can.
Yes, thank you, Rashmi. Thank you so much. In that case, please, without further ado, let's form groups. And it's now 14:38. Let's say 39. Let's be back in about 14 to 15 minutes. Give yourself some breathing room to get attuned to each other in the conversation, especially to each other's differences. So let's be back in 15 minutes, ready to converge with your questions. Well, first of all, reporting the points of your discussion. And then, of course, I welcome questions, clarification points, just as we did yesterday, which to me seemed to be a very productive session. So let's be back in 15 minutes at most.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashmi. Okay, I think we can converge, Rashmi.
Yes, ma'am, we can.
I have a problem in the chat because someone wrote and I was trying to answer to reply and the comment disappeared. The comment I was trying to respond disappeared. And I have, things disappear. Okay, no, now I see it. Now I see it.
Yes.
Yes, now I see it. Just wanted to make sure. And there is also something else in the chat, gear program, I don't know, view recap, but that does not concern me. I can see it now. Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Sorry about that. Just wanted to make sure that I get everyone's comments.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Uh, Hello, ma'am.
Yes, Priyanshu. Priyanshu, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are perfectly. Let's
Okay,
start
ma'am.
with the sharing. I was just responding to the comment in the chat. Let's start sharing the group's discussion.
Okay, ma'am. So first of all, the greetings of the day.
Okay.
Okay,
Greetings
ma'am.
back.
So okay, ma'am. Like I have taken the prompt one.
Mm-hmm,
So that contains questions like why the Kalra has chosen the title the self
mm-hmm,
portrait. So when I was reading the paragraph, when I was reading the work, so to me, the title suggests that title or the journey of the poet or journey of the critic suggests that there was a departure from conventional art criticism and from something that is very personal. So what we see that uh, initially the criticism was very objective, but
mm-hmm,
from point of view the Kalra looks it is very subjective. So
mm-hmm,
what Kalra presents, it's a subjective and a self-revealing approach to art criticism. And talking about the book, that is the title of the book is Self-Portrait. So the book also tells us about the exploration of her own position as a critic and also about the act of engaging with other artists.
mm-hmm,
So so here she uses the montage of conversations. So this term like montage of conversation basically reflect that both artist thought and her evolving perspective of criticism.
mm-hmm,
So to me, what I felt like this book is not just a portrayal of artist, but it is also the reflection of Kalra herself, like her struggles to redefine criticism.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like yeah, ma'am. So like by calling the book the self portrait, she is trying that her identity and the method which she used as a critic are just as part of the work as the voices of the artist she interviews. So like in
Okay.
the in this title, self portrait, like self is basically the personal engagement with artist and within with her own self. Like and she that's why she is rejecting the traditional method of criticism, and she is like trying to bring up the subjectivity of the work basically. So where she was like being very she is like she argues that like traditional art criticism is very artificial, and that is something which is very ultimately that is very unauthentic, that is not authentic. So she uses few phrases like a funny profession, and like she also used that like critique creates power structures, and she also mentioned like the art should inspire people to live creatively. So
Yeah.
like uh, so like she in the self portrait, like she explicitly criticizes the role of critique as like someone who creates judgment rather than engaging with art in a meaningful way. Like
Yeah.
it is somewhere like traditional criticism is somewhere like it's a training for criticism rather than a real engagement with the work of artist. And where she also mentioned of like power structure, that the critique are trying to impose their views and they are not ready to listen the voices of artist, which is the main point, which is the main objective of the criticism, that they have to support, they have to listen the voices, the views of artists. And so that is the main purpose of the art. Like art should inspire people to live creatively rather than be confined by rigid critical frameworks, ma'am. And
Thank you.
she is
Sorry.
also like, yes, ma'am. Like she also like using tape recorder. So like what I found, like the symbol of tape recorder is something that she does not want something to be edited while she is like examining. So like like she uses tape recorder because she want conversations exactly as they happened. Like she want
Yeah.
like something
Yeah.
that to be
Yeah.
very raw and that to be very
Yeah.
spontaneous without
Yeah.
any editorial references
Yeah.
inferences.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, Priyanshu, for this eloquent recap. Let me highlight before ceding the floor to someone else, and there are comments also in the chat. Let me highlight the significant points of your contribution. First of all, a departure. There is no doubt that Lonzi is looking for a
Yes.
renewal.
Yes, ma'am.
Departure from the. I love the way you put it. A departure. She's seeking a departure from conventional art criticism. I like the word departure because it evokes the visual image of someone turning, the human figure turning that we started our lectures with. Um, Also meaningful is the way you heard in Lonzi a shift from uh, shift toward, I should say, something, a subjective
Yes,
register.
ma'am.
You said personal,
Yeah.
but that's very true. That connects with the notion of experience that feminist criticism invokes, and that distinguishes feminist criticism from every other school of criticism. The appeal to experience, the appeal to embodied thought. So the shift from traditional criticism, evaluative criticism, to a subjective register, but that automatically invites us to question, to ask more questions about the critic and who the critic is and what the critic should be. Another important word in your contribution is struggles. The struggle to redefine, because it is a struggle. It is, there are tensions, that it is a struggle, and subjectivity is not embraced lightly. There is a forceful shift, even in the simple title, Let's Spit on Hegel. That's a very in your face statement, but there is a struggle. And the struggle comes from the fact that the shift is needed. It is felt as a common, a shared urgency, a shared need. Now, what you said about the tape recorder is important. So the turn to the technological support, because the tape recorder can help reproduce on paper the raw conversations as they are. So we can, what is the knowledge that we come away with after reading a bit of Lorde? We come away with the knowledge that criticism should be enriched by this embodied subjective element. Now, the
Exactly, ma'am.
struggle.
This is what her like she puts into a priority. Like she puts a priority of engaging with the artist. Like she wants the criticism to be very raw and to be very real.
Exactly. And here the tape recorder, technology is key because, as you said, and I want to emphasize rawness, the rawness of the conversation, because it's as if the tenet she's looking for, the vicinity, the proximity with the artist, the encounter, can only be rendered not theoretically. It's as if there were only there was a limit to what she can do, but it can be rendered concretely, pragmatically, practically by the rawness of these conversations, by the text. So I think this is an important point. We may not have the appropriate words for it, but yes, seeking the rawness of the conversation, reflecting exactly what you said, Priyanshu, the idea of an encounter, a listening, a way of listening by criticism, listening to art in a meaningful way. So I think that's a very good contribution that you gave. Thank you. Before moving to Dipjoti, allow me
Yes, ma'am. I
to
have one thing to say.
yes, go ahead.
Ma'am, yesterday we talked about space of appearance. So can we apply that theory to this concept? So like the space of appearance gives us like identity and space to realize our inner potential and everything. And so like can we put or like can we compare like if I want to analyze this work, if I want to properly scrutinize this work. So can I put that theory, the space of appearance, and can I analyze this thing, and then
Oh wow,
it will give,
wow,
it might
yeah.
give some good end results.
Oh, Priyanshu, thank you. You are actually doing what I was hoping, these instruments might do. I mean, first of all, give you instruments so that you can take them. Now, yeah, the short answer is yes. Yeah, let me tell you why. It has to do with the tape recorder, with the choice of enlisting the help of the tape recorder to reproduce conversations, because that reproduction gestures toward a different discourse. Now, the space of appearance here is relevant insofar as you might be able to work Arendt's concept to fit Lonz's desire to include artists. In other words, the space of appearance being connected or being used as a torch to illuminate Lonz's desire to create a discourse where first of all, the not intention, but the work, the labor of the artist appears. The critical views of the artist are manifest. And where a discourse, the space of appearance would be discourse where the critic minimizes his mastery, his authority, his or her controlling authority. So I think short-circuiting Arendt's notion, space of appearance, and Lonzi would pay, because what they have in common, I mean, they're very different thinkers, but Lonzi has a very she's very committed to the aesthetic political continuum, and we have seen that Arendt has a similar commitment. Yes, I think it would be wonderful for you to to carry this on and to build on this short circuiting. That would be really great.
Yes, ma'am.
And if you ever do,
Actually, like
please.
while I was actually, yes, ma'am. Like while I was reading this, I have not read the this whole topic, but like the thing which you have shared. So I was like reading. So I thought like yesterday we had this topic, the space of appearance, and similarly here also we are talking about like our own individual identity. Like if we are not giving them space, they will not be true. So like for person to express himself or herself, like they want to be in a proper space. So like here like Carla also tells us about like expression of criticism. So like so that's why I use the word like I use the word like I'm forgetting what was the word I used. Like moving away from traditional criticism to something that is very positive or that gives us departure actually. So from this word departure, that is only I meant like breaking the rigid rules and norms. So like then only we will be able to express our true individuality.
Yes, yes. Now, what you say links up, connect using the space of appearance as a concept to harness, Lonzi. I think connects to something that Pranab said in the chat, which has to do with the unthought. Now, remember, appearance, space of appearance in Arendt was concerned about an inclusive society, okay? Space of appearance is the polis where individuals, through language and action, are heard and seen by others. Lonzi is talking about the unthought, this tension toward what has not been said, was what has not emerged, what has not appeared yet in discourse. So I think you have a point there. Apropos, speaking of what has not been said, as Pranav says in the chat, silence is not simply absence. Absolutely, and this is connected to the earlier part. The critic's task is not simply to critique but to reimagine. Yes, that Lonzi would subscribe completely to this. To take what has been discarded, the undervalued, the unsaid. Now, Lonzi's notion of the unthought is not some faraway, distant, utopian notion, but since the unthought exists, if we assume, if we follow up on Arendt, if we follow up on Lorde, if we follow up on theorists who say language is important and we should not discard the problematics around language, these critics are keen on language because they see language as something that completely defines us, the humans, also maybe the non-humans. But the point is that everything that exists can be channeled through language, right? So as Pranav says, so the silence is not what has not been invented yet, but what has been suppressed. And I think both Lonzi and Lorde would endorse this. To go back to what Pranav says, silence is not simply absence, but a compressed, I love the word archive, compressed archive of suppressed knowledge. Yes, in the folds, knowledge in the folds of knowledge. Remember Sontag to the substratum. Not to speak of all the psychoanalytic thinkers who have fueled not only contemporary thought, but especially feminist critique. They would say that silence is actually a compressed archive of suppressed knowledge, waiting to be given form. Yes, that's exactly what Lorde means by the diving into the chaos of knowledge, because it's about a struggle, a very taxing struggle. Remember the knife of Adrian Rich, a struggle to disassemble, but to give form. So a struggle where the disassembling here meaning siding the suppressed knowledge. Critique is not the code that says absolutely. I'm glad that with Lonzi and Lorde we arrived at this point. Not the code that said it's about decoding. Yes, it's about understanding, interpretation, but it's not the code dissection of ideas, but the generative act of engagement and invitation to dialogue, hearing the artist, the encounter, then a final verdict. Exactly, rather than the verdict of judgment. Is because that verdict, criticism as an ultimate judgment always assumes that the critic is an ultimate authority, that there is a critic ready to educate the mass, the poor ignorant masses. These thinkers just want to get rid of that model, and they really struggle very hard to get rid of that model. So thank you for this building these sort of bridges. Before giving ceding the floor to Deep Jyoti, I would like to take one more comment in the chat. Prompt one: why the tape recorder? I think it's because it's mechanical. It will record everything. Yes, I know it's obvious, but it pays to remind ourselves. Yeah, it's a mechanical thing. It can record everything exactly, even the nuances, even those. And when Lonzi says it pays to listen to the artist again and again and again, she is talking about something that Pranab has hinted at, generating form. Generating form. She's really using the artist's word as support in hope that she might be able to glean that suppressed, gouge, to hear that suppressed knowledge. So it's a really collaborative enterprise, the criticism she has in mind. But so the tape recorder, I think I hear you, the tape recorder helps because it records everything, helps Lonzi in brooding over this new criticism that she's looking for. Every uttered word without any judgment or biases. Exactly. Moreover, it creates a kind of plane, right? Flat plane where there are different opinions. This is what actually self-portrait is. If you open that book, it's marvelous. There is no argument. No argument. So no, she tries radically. She avoids the hierarchical argumentative structure. It's a montage, a bunch of conversations, and the idea is to create this flat plane. It is omnipresent and omniscient and only a mechanical object. Here, the tape recorder is giving the author and the interviewee the space to open up as the mechanical object does not pose any danger to their radical thoughts and conversation. This is an important point. Because you're saying, basically, Suketana, you're saying that the tape recorder, that is the mechanical object, enables them to create a certain intimacy whereby authenticity, sincerity can happen. I think this is a point that deserves, the use of the mechanical. I'm reminded, because of this positive assessment of technology, I'm reminded of Benjamin's own assessment of photography in a wonderful essay that is called The Short History of Photography, where he argues that the apparatus, contradicting everyone who feared technology, he says the apparatus, okay, the minute it is aimed at the photographed subject, the apparatus can actually has the potential of returning the gaze, returning our gaze in a way that other humans don't. So your comment reminds me, your positive assessment of the apparatus, the idea that the apparatus can facilitate an intimacy, a correspondence, can facilitate a vicinity. Very intriguing. It was also not to kill the speaker and whoever you're documenting, because when we speak then right out of it, there is no reliability in it. Well, yes, this would have to be debated. I think I know what you mean, but I mean, writing is not just a reduction. of things. In fact, Lonze is looking for a different kind of writing that would awaken, living thought, would awaken the suppressed knowledge. And if we rather choose to record directly, probably it'll be authentic, and it's an instrument to live up to expectations of the self, and thus a spoken self-portrait. There is no doubt there is a drive toward authenticity. Now, we should not take for granted what authenticity means, but there is this, remember when we talked about the movement of externalization, back to Piancho, the movement of externalization, the movement of expression, the movement stepping into the space of appearance. Your comment, evokes this movement toward authenticity, this wanting to this movement forward toward authenticity, wanting no prostheses, no props. This is also in tune, allow me to say this, with Carla Accardi, the other Carla. We talked about their collaboration when Carla Accardi said, okay, I wanted to experiment. I'm the kind of artist who wanted to get rid of the past. Okay, and I wanted to find new ways of expressing myself, and she abandoned the camera. She was afraid that she would be left with nothing, but it was not so. Therefore, as she says, certain possibility of an encounter. Yes, when recording and documenting, instead we write and document. It's more about staying true to the fact of yes, truth. Truth is yes, truth is an issue here. Lonze is interested in the notion of truth. And the notion of truth, and she sees it, maybe idealistically or not, I don't think so because she practiced it, she sees truth at the intersection of art and life. That is a form of understanding art also as the possibility of practicing different kinds of lives that are truer to a just human condition, to a more humanizing condition. In a way, creation of the text here, the self, yes, self-portrait is a body, it's a textual body, right? Without any authorial presence is the tradition. Well, I'm in awe of the way you understood Lonze. I mean, really, thank you so much. That's all I can say. Now, before I go to why the self, I'd like to shift to Deep Jyoti, and then I will get back to why the self. Is that okay with you guys?
Yes,
there
ma'am.
you are. Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you. So, yes, hello.
Yeah, hi. I'll be trying to answer some of the questions that you ask in prompt one. So like as you had given us the time to reflect on it, I had actually prepared a small note. So I'll just read out the note what I have written.
Please do. Share it with us, please.
So the title Self-Portrait, perhaps because it is through these conversations, through these communications, which are quote unquote humanly rewarding, Lonze is able to look into herself as well. It is through these conversations and exchanges, through speaking and through listening, that she is able to mirror herself in some ways. The self here, I believe, isn't the self like we have historically understood in the context of Renaissance humanism. The self here is more expanding. It goes beyond the individual body and the invisible soul to touch upon a greater network of being, of community, perhaps even situating itself in non-human things like technology, in this case, for example, the tape recorder. Now the tape recorder, because it is allowing to freeze sounds in time, and by doing that, it allows Lonze to visit and revisit, and thereby question and re-question, reflect and re-reflect. Each time we listen to something, like each time we read something, the text is loaded with the possibility of generating more and more meanings. The tape recorder and the recordings allow Lonze not only to understand the conversations better, but also to understand herself or herselves in plurality better. The role of the critic, according to Lonze, is to participate, to participate in the dialogue of humanity. She is, like many feminists would, focusing more on feeling versus fact, and leaving room for possibilities versus absolute truth. The role of critic somehow becomes more or less like the role of a creative practitioner, something whose ideal can never be realized fully in the objective sense of the term. It is ever evolving, like life itself, like humanity itself. So I want to end my note by asking this question: can criticism and theory be a performative practice? Can criticism and theory be an extension of art itself and not a binary opposite of the same?
Thank you, Dipjoti, for your generous commitment. I, of course, love the question you landed. I would say that judging from the most recent development of theory, because theory, I mean, I don't think we live in an era of post theory. Theory evolves. It's an ongoing transformation. I would say that we can answer in the affirmative in the sense that there is a search. There is a search. There is the reason why theory arose as an issue was to freeze, liberate criticism, not only from traditional epistemological constraints like the all-knowing critic, etc., but also to find a different way of writing. So to shorten the distance between the critic and the writer. Now, the critic is a reader who very often, when the critic is a scholar, the critic is a reader who is in love with a writer. So there are critics who specialize themselves on one author all their lives: Proust, Sontag, etc. Lonzi helps us see. I mean, she's writing in the late 60s. She helps us turn the lights on Anglophone theory from an international perspective, and to see the search for a criticism that is theoretical, sophisticated, not because of an aestheticizing need, but because it's a criticism that wants to think with the art object. She wants to think with the art object. So I think that's, first of all, let me emphasize, as with the previous comments, Priyanshu, this is a venue of research. I mean, you realize it's a question that we cannot settle, because it is a question that points to a venue of research. So it's wonderful, wonderful venue. In your generous note, what I would like to highlight is mirror. Okay, the idea of the search for a mirroring relation between critic and artist has a function. I mean, it's not limited to itself. It has the function of placing the self, you said, in a more expansive configuration. In other words, I love when you said that there's an expanding notion of the self. Back to your question, a theory that carries on its task of finding a different discourse that is neither criticism, neither philosophy, etc., ought to deal with the meaning of self. Self is a very common noun in our lexicon, but what do we mean by it? So self-expanding, the individual self, always in the midst of a collective ensemble. That's part of the achievement of self-portrait, and the provocative title self-portrait, because it's a collective ensemble. It's not just one self. It's not about individualism. And then I love when you talked about reflect and reflect, because it connects to Pranav's comment on, okay, silence is not silence, but there is an archive of suppressed knowledge. I mean, where our imagination is really taken with the archive of suppressed knowledge. Some of us talk about theory simply because we want to do justice to the unthought, the unsaid. And another important point, and I'll finish. Yesterday, we bumped into the issue of multiplicity. Okay, you are suggesting that Lorde's critique, as Lorde's critique, I would add, as one concern. It wants to be, Lorde is concerned with doing justice to multiplicity, not necessary, which is different from abandoning oneself, dandy-like fashion to wallowing in multiplicity, which would stop the direction of thought, right? Because it would, you would celebrate multiplicity, so the problems of hierarchy of power disappear. But she is interested in taking stock of the fact that meaning is multiple. How can we do justice to the multiplicity of meaning without falling into excesses of, the excess of wallowing in multiplicity and therefore not resolving any problem or any issue, or without rigidifying ourselves on objectivity, for example. So the fact that Lunzi and the other feminist thinkers like Lorde take stock of this problem is important to me. That is, how do we do justice to multiplicity? This is the problem that ruled Derrida's enterprise, the deconstructive enterprise, right? We like to compartmentalize, divide in schools, feminism, deconstruction, but we are describing a climate that is not only a localized climate. Its power is that it is attractive because it is a tool. It becomes a tool for discourse for different people across the world. Thank you, Aidan, for the rich. But I would cultivate the question you asked. The critic of a creative practitioner. How far can we push that point? Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me return to why the self. Why the self? I think this is still Saketana. Now, the self is ambiguous. Here we go. We were saying that just 2 minutes ago. It is fragmented and lacks the concrete sense of the self, as Lons is trying to deconstruct the traditional notion of criticism and thereby forming herself and her idea of criticism. So there is a self-information. The critic's self is evolving. So self-portrait as a book places us before this critic information, this evolving critic. But as you're saying, the meaning of self is ambiguous because if we connect to Deep Jyoti's comment, there is a sense in which the self is placed in a collective, an expansive and expanded landscape. The self becomes fragmented. In fact, if you look at the way the book is put together, it's a sequence of raw conversations. There is almost no edge where the conversation flow into each other, but you still retain the sense of fragments because they, zigzag, move about. There is no logical thread as you would have in an argument. The only logical cohesive thread is, of course, the question about the critic, which returns. In fact, Lons's own insertions are about that. She listens to the artist and she inserts herself to reflect on what has happened to the image of the critic. We read those quotations during the lecture. So the idea of criticism mirroring the way a planet is formed. Oh, I love this metaphor. The idea of the planet, the idea of the plane. First, there is the abstract and then the concrete. Yes, yes, the self is crucial as it is through the self that Lonzi constructs her idea. Now, the meaning of self in this other part of your comment relates to Lonzi's own self experience, self-consciousness, the desire to include the subjective element, as we were saying, in how do we, in a way, let me try and find the right word, in a way, negating, denying the subjectivity of the critic is a bit of a hypocritical thing. It's inauthentic, because the critic always comes to the work of art with a subjectivity. Now, the way in which this problem has been eluded in the past, think about critics like Tsvetan Todorov, think of like critics like Paul Deman, with Todorov especially, the figure of the reader, in the abstract has been invoked. So the critic is someone that remains invisible and shifts swims in and out the idea of the reader. The reader thinks that. So there has been an overshadowing, a denial of the subjectivity of the critic. And at this point in time, Lonzi realizes that, reveals that, and she's reacting to that denial. The self is crucial as it is through the self that Lonzi constructs her idea of her very own self and what ideology and tradition she stands for. Given that she's the founder of yes, thank you for understanding Lonzi that way.